Hello, and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve, and I always have a bit of a chuckle when I see content creator after content creator all floating identical ideas, with the current theme being that everyone is looking to sell Haaland. Now, I've currently got no plans to sell him, as I think the reasons to do so are a little bit thin, which we'll go through in today's video. We'll also go through how I did in Game Week 9, revisit the players that are currently on the shortlist of sales for my team, as well as my future plans and my moves for Game Week 10. So remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, especially if you get any value out of the following content. Right, so Game Week 9. I scored 53 points in Game Week 9, which was about 4 to 5 points shy of my safety score, meaning I dropped another 300k in overall rank, with each point being worth roughly about 80k at my overall rank, which I haven't actually managed to add the overall ranks to my website yet, but it is on the cards as something to add. Not great reading though, as I am currently languishing at 3.5 million, which is one of my worst starts to an FPL season. However, I do still have all my chips apart from my first wild card, so hopefully we can do some damage with those later in the season, with many managers having already used their triple captain chips, with many of them actually going out against Southampton last weekend. So I captained Haaland for his solo goal in a 1-0 victory, but that wasn't enough for Haaland to pull in any bonus points, which probably ended up working well for me, or working in my favour, as there were a lot of triple captains riding on Haaland's home fixture to Southampton last weekend. Now, Haaland did rack up quite a lot of XG in that match, but having watched the game, I mean, there was a lot of chances where he was actually, there was a few headed chances where he was kind of going backwards and trying to head forwards and wasn't able to generate power from shots. And I don't know if those XG stats were telling the true story of how likely those goals were to go in. Now, I actually thought Southampton played really well, and I actually lost quite a bit of faith in the commentators during this match. Just on a little aside here. So, in the 38th minute, I wrote down some notes saying that I think the commentators could take a bit more of a positive approach to how Southampton are trying to play football. Yes, Southampton will lose games by trying to play out from the back, but I'd much prefer Southampton trying to work towards a long-term goal of being able to play more expansive and entertaining football. Now, to do that, you have to try and play that way often, learn through the failure, and build experience to be more effective in future. The alternative is to kick the ball long, give possession back to City in their own half, and hope you can press to win it back in City's half, which City will just end up lapping up, making Southampton have to defend for the majority of the game. Now, that's pretty boring football, in my opinion, and I admire any team that tries to play a more beautiful style of game. Now, by the 70th minute of that match, Southampton were actually playing some nice football out from the back, working well up the pitch and generating some relatively eye-catching footy in periods of the game. Yet there were no positive comments about this from the commentators when they did manage to string these together. So anyway, if you are a Southampton fan out there, I'd be quite happy with the fact that they're trying to play, more expansive football, even if it does mean that they will lose some matches relatively heavily. They did manage to keep City to a 1-0 victory, which is pretty good going and something that they should probably be celebrating. Now, Solanke, which I discussed in my video on Wednesday, his stay will be short in my team, regardless of what he does over the next 2 weeks. He came away with another blank, was very uninvolved in the game, and there's not really a hell of a lot to talk about when it comes to Solanke. I mean, yeah, Son wasn't on the pitch, and so potentially he did have penalties, but Spurs weren't able to muster anything during the game for him. Now, Mbumo has been a bit of a standout for me. I'm glad that I brought him in early on, and his 2 goals were lovely to see as an owner. But of course, he is owned by a good percentage of the game, especially the top 10k, which is actually around 75% ownership for Mbumo. Still, I did gain ground on roughly 60% of the players around me, as he was only owned by about 38 to 40%. So his points did still gain me quite a bit of rank. Now I sold Saka as he was flagged heading into game week 9, and I had held on to Saka through game week 8 where he did end up getting benched, and so I sold him trying to avoid a second benching in a row. And of course, Saka started and ended up scoring himself a goal, but he did only earn a 9-pointer, so I did end up 1 point better off bringing Palmer in, and I was actually making that move setting up towards game week 12's fixture swing, which I have talked quite a bit about in Wednesday's video. Now, Foden had a couple of chances to score in the game, but was mostly pulling the strings as a creator in the match. But unfortunately, none of his chances were going in for City, so he just came away with a 3-pointer, only getting the clean sheet there. Now, Smith Rowe managed an assist in the game and was actually subbed off before Fulham lost the clean sheet, meaning he did get that extra point for the clean sheet there, coming away with a nice 6-pointer from one of my enablers. Rogers got an early substitution at about the 56th minute mark. My words are all over the place today. The early substitution, which was a bit concerning, but it is something that I had already discussed, as the UEFA Champions League was always likely to take a toll on him at some point. I'm pretty sure that's why he probably got pulled early in the match. I mean, Spurs conceded yet again. Pedro Porro can't remember him getting any massive chances in the game. Kanate came away with a 1-pointer. Gabriel got himself injured in the match and came off early with a 1-pointer. Raya got himself 0 points. I mean, 53 all out. It's not ideal. We got a bit of a red arrow there, but given that there were a few triple captains floating about, it probably would have been a green arrow had there not been that many triple captains about, and a 6-point triple captain is on the slightly lower side, and so hopefully we can do some damage with that chip later in the season. Right, so on to game week 10 and how the team is lining up. Now, thankfully, I managed to survive the many injuries that seem to be floating about in the Carabao Cup matches that have happened in the last couple of days. So I can actually look to plan for future moves as opposed to having to deal with any late injuries. Now, as I said in the intro, there seems to be a lot of content creators who all seem to be reading from the same playbook at the moment, with everyone looking to sell Haaland at the moment. Now, this is probably a big driver towards the whole cabal narrative that has been floated in the community recently. Me, on the other hand, I actually have no plans to sell Haaland as of right now. And that doesn't mean that I am totally opposed to selling him ever, but I'd need to see a pretty good reason to do so. Now, the big advantage I can see in selling Haaland is that you can jump on one of the cheap forwards, bring Salah into your squad. So it's basically going to be either Haaland or Salah for the majority of managers that are looking to sell Haaland. But it also means that you could hold on to, well, it's likely going to line up that it's going to be Salah, Palmer, Saka. But the advantage of selling Haaland is you have a little bit more funds to hold on to an Mbeumo in midfield and someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold in defense. Now, for me, I can quite easily hold on to Mbeumo in my team. And so it's very much a choice of Haaland versus Salah plus Trent, or I should probably go Salah plus Trent versus Haaland plus, in my team, Konate. And I think Konate is a pretty decent cover for the Liverpool defence, as he does block all of the clean sheets of Trent Alexander-Arnold. But the main reason that I'm not looking to sell Haaland is I am not really at all interested in jumping onto Trent Alexander-Arnold at the moment, because he has currently been playing through an injury, which we found out about just before last weekend's deadline. So I don't really like the idea of selling the most prolific striker in the Premier League to jump onto an expensive defender that's currently carrying an injury. I've also owned Salah recently this season, and even though he has returned points lately, I did sell him due to his underperformance compared to Salah of the previous seasons and how he had been performing, noting that he'd been a lot less involved in the attack, quite often opting to stay more wide rather than hauling us to get into the penalty box. And so I don't see Salah as a massive draw card in order to be selling Haaland. Now, of course, Haaland hasn't been too involved either over the last few game weeks, but he's already on 11 goals from 9 games. And so hopefully everyone ends up selling him and he starts banging in hat-tricks again. And my rank will hopefully go much more into the positive, and we can start climbing up to where I would much more prefer to be. Haaland will be my captain this week. I was contemplating putting it on Palmer away to Manchester United, but now that Ten Hag has been sacked, I'm a little bit unsure what to expect from United under Van Nistelrooy, having only the Carabao Cup match to go on. And so I think it's going to be quite hard to tell how this game will actually play out. So it's going to be a Haaland captain away to Bournemouth with Palmer with the vice captaincy heading into game week 10. Now, Foden, I should probably talk about him as he is my semi-premium differential. Now, he started in game week 9 and is clearly being preferred in the central role of the Man City midfield. Now, I do know that he did just start up front in the Carabao Cup match against Spurs. However, if we just go back to the Premier League match in game week 9, the pre-match graphic, which was showing the lineup and how everyone was structured on the pitch, actually had Foden listed out at left wing with both Bernardo Silva and Matheus Nunes as the two cams. However, in the match, Nunes was actually playing out at left wing, not as a cam. And so Pep has preferred to keep Foden centrally here, pushing Nunes out to the wing, which he has played previously, but very rarely. Now, I have been talking about this for a while now, but if you needed a nail in the coffin about Foden being preferred centrally in that City lineup, Nunes just punched it with his start out at left wing with Doku, Grealish and the other out-and-out wingers all unavailable for that match. So therefore, when we're assessing Foden's likely starts and minutes, we have to restrict that assessment to players like Kevin De Bruyne, Gundogan, and to a certain extent Bernardo Silva for a spot in the central role in the team. Now, yes, Foden may play on the wing in the odd game, but I think this will only likely happen when KDB, Gundogan, and Bernardo Silva are all on the pitch. And even then, I still think it'll be someone like Bernardo Silva who would be the most likely man that would be shifted to one of those wide roles. Now, with KDB still being injured, I think Foden is way more likely to start and play the majority of minutes. And with the early substitution in the EFL Cup match, which was pre-60 minutes, I think he's even more likely to start this Bournemouth fixture. And when I brought Foden in, I had him down as a hold for 4 weeks, which would have taken me up until game week 12. And that was, of course, assuming that he was still in my predicted lineup week on week. Given he looks likely to start against Bournemouth, I'll be rolling the dice again on him starting again this weekend. Now, Foden's spot in my team will eventually become a premium midfielder, with the most likely candidate being Saka at the moment. But I'm currently 0.2 million shy of going straight from Foden up to Saka. Yeah, so while we're still on Man City, I'll just do a slight diversion across to Rico Lewis. Now, I need to revisit my position on Rico Lewis, and I said in a video back just after City had played Fulham in Game Week 7 that I thought Lewis was undroppable given what was going on at City. Now, I actually cited the Akanji substitution where he went off for Kyle Walker as being the key piece of information indicating that Lewis is vital to the central midfield of City's style of play, especially with Rodri out for the season. Now, Pep has just confirmed this with his post-match comments from the fixtures just happened, and he said Rico, in quotes Lewis, because he didn't actually say Lewis, but Rico is the only player we cannot rest. We would like to rest him, but we cannot do it. So Rico Lewis looks like he's about as nailed as he could possibly be in that City lineup, unless it's some sort of really easy game where he might look to play. I don't even know who's actually going to play in there. I don't know how he would rotate that through. Maybe trying Mateus Nunes as like a CDM for a little bit. I don't know, but I think Lewis's starts are pretty nailed. Anyway, back to my team. So Solanke and Porro. No, where am I? Sorry, I lost my spot. So Solanke and Porro are going to stay for the Aston Villa match this weekend in my team, which means I'm probably also likely going to hold on to them for the Ipswich match in game week 11 as well. Now, I did discuss replacement options for Solanke in my video on Wednesday, and I'm now even more heavily leaning towards moving Solanke up to Nicholas Jackson for Chelsea's nice run of fixtures, which start in game week 12. Now, that requires a 0.3 million upgrade right now, assuming that if Solanke drops in price over the coming game weeks, or if Jackson goes up, then obviously that 0.3 million will change. And so I am going to need to find a good downgrade option somewhere in my team in order to allow me to buy both Saka and Jackson into my team, which is probably going to cost me 0.5 to 0.6 million in order to get both players in. And it's most likely going to be Pedro Porro that's going to be the downgrade for that moving forward. Now, I did discuss Ait Nori a little bit in the video on Wednesday, but I do want to sit down and actually watch Wolves play to see what I'm actually buying into there and whether it's worth risking an Nori who's currently on 4 yellow cards. He would have to have some pretty serious attacking threat in that team to make that move worthwhile. Otherwise, I might just look at going to Rico Lewis, considering he looks like he's going to be nailed in that City backline for a fair while. Now, Smith Rowe still has a few good fixtures ahead of him, and he's got Brentford at home this weekend, who have been scoring a lot of goals, Brentford, but they have also been conceding a lot of goals, and so I think this is a great fixture for Smith Rowe. Now, I am hoping that Semenyo manages to pick up his 5th yellow card in the next couple of game weeks and serves his suspension so that I can bring him straight back in for Bournemouth's really nice run of fixtures that start, I think, around game week 11 or 12. Yeah, game week 11. So Bournemouth are down here. They got City this weekend, but then it's away to Brentford, who've been shipping goals. Home to Brighton. Brighton have been a little bit leaky. Way to Wolves, Spurs, Ipswich, West Ham. Don't know what United will be by game week 17, but then Crystal Palace at home. This is a really nice run of fixtures for Bournemouth. And so Smith Rowe's just going to wait until I can jump across to Semenyo. Fulham do have a couple of nice fixtures. Right, so Gabriel in defense. We did get some positive news from Arteta about Gabriel's injury, and he said that it doesn't look that bad at all. He was much better the next day. Hopefully he'll be fine. And then a little bit later in another interview, he said, Gabriel hasn't trained yet, so obviously he's out at the moment. So let's see how he evolves over the next few games. Now, in my video on Wednesday, I had already floated the idea of holding on to Gabriel if he's out for the short term, as I don't think he's worth 2 transfers to sell and bring back in again. And he is a player that I'm definitely going to want in my squad moving forward. And with the confirmation of the injury not being too bad, assuming Arteta is being truthful, I'm just going to follow through with this and start Gabriel this weekend away to Newcastle and just let Wout Faes come in off the bench away to Ipswich, which is not ideal. It is an away game, but at least it's only Ipswich. Hopefully Wout Faes can get some sort of bullet header or something. Because crossed, it's not heading into his own net. Kanate is just going to be in my team for ages. I think I picked him up for 5.1 million as a nailed centre-back in the Liverpool backline with some attacking threat from set pieces. He's already scored a goal for me so far this season, so he's going nowhere. Rodgers, I'll be playing against Spurs. I think he probably gets 70 to 75 minutes, which is pretty decent for a 5 million odd budget enabler. And like I said, Tottenham's defense has been pretty leaky as well. And so I think he's got some pretty good prospects moving forward. And that basically wraps up the team. So, all right, well, that wraps up this video. So don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a comment to tell us what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next time.